I want to welcome you to the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center and this program that we're doing with the Bainbridge Island Historical Museum. We do one program once a month with Katie in the museum, and we're very grateful to be able to participate in this. We have programs Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we invite you to check out our website to find out what other programs are coming up. Our programs are sponsored thanks to our friends at Fieldstone Memory Care Bainbridge Island. Fieldstone offers innovative and compassionate care worth the wait. You can call 360-271-2530 if you'd like to schedule a tour of Fieldstone's beautifully appointed apartments on Rolling Bay today. And I would like to welcome Katie to introduce today's program.
Everyone, hello. I am so honored to be here today with you. I'd like to begin by saying that the Bainbridge Island Historical Museum is on the lands of the Suquamish tribe, and acknowledge that that Suquamish tribe have been and are stewards of the land and the Salish Sea, and we appreciate being on their lands. And I'm coming to you from the, I want to acknowledge the Lenape tribe. The Lenape tribe is a tribe in New Jersey, and that's where what is now called New Jersey. And so I'm honored to be on that land and coming to you from this land. And the Bainbridge Island Historical Museum is bringing this program to you. It's a program where we learn stories of Bainbridge Island from the people who experience the stories. And today I'm very, very honored to be welcoming two Bainbridge Islanders. And I'm going to begin by inviting our panelists to please introduce yourselves. And maybe I will ask Joy, would you be willing to introduce yourself? Joy, I think that your mute button is pushed. Please begin again.
My name is Eleanor Joyce James Rapata Belmont. I'm from the Nooksack tribe 306, and my mom's from Squaw Village. I'm the mother of 3 sons and 2 daughters, and 7 grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren. I'm half Filipino. My native name is Lothquit. I share the name with my mother. It means to take care of your regalia.
Welcome. It's honored to have you. Thank you so much, Joy, for being with us today. And Anna, may I invite you to introduce yourself? Don't forget to unmute yourself. Thanks, Anna.
Can you hear me? Okay, lovely. Tahalwich and Squish, Ulnumsh. My name is Yatahalwit. I'm part of the Seashell people in Canada, and that's where my mom is from. I'm also Ilocano. I'm half Filipina, like Joy. My father spoke Ilocano and was Ilocano from the Philippine Islands. I have 16 grandchildren, and Gary and I have 6 kids, and grew up on Bainbridge Island with Joy. And thank you for the invitation to share our stories. Oops, sorry, I have to also add my other name. This is protocol. My Sechelt name is Yatahowit. My other name is Tlagawila. I was adopted by the Kwakwaka'wakw people. So I carry two names, and Yatahowit means woman who gives of herself, and Tlagawila means where the strength comes from. And so I share that because we're expected to carry our names in a good way. And I know that Joy has done that throughout her life. And it is my hope that I continue to do that here while sitting and visiting with you.
It's an honor. Thank you so much for sharing who you are, part of, and your names. And it's just a pleasure to have you. And Anna, there's a new movie coming out. It's been shown. It's called Honor Thy Mother. And part of doing this new movie, which is about the Bainbridge Island experience of the Indipino people, the producer Gina Corpus had asked many people, please share your stories. And so one of the things that happens is that when you're filming and you're asking many people to share their stories, people aren't necessarily open to it at first. But then you take the film and it gets made, and there are some stories that don't get into the film. And so this program is really to honor Joy, because Joy, your story is in the film, and it is part of the film, but you didn't get to tell your story as someone in the film. And Anna is in the film. So I think without any further ado, let's play the trailer of this wonderful film that's coming out and will be shown in October, Honor Thy Mother.
I was 5 years old when I went to residential school. Being 5 years old and thinking back, we didn't know where we were going.
When they first arrived, they all had to wear these black uniforms. They lived in dormitories, were raised to be Catholics, but they were never really educated. They might have learned how to read and write, but mostly their duties were domestic duties. There were a lot of Aboriginal children who never left these Indian residential schools.
I think from my mother, just from finding out about her life, what a strong young woman she was, for her to leave a country, not know anybody, and come to a foreign country and then survive. She was seeking something more than, rather than less than. She was seeking a place that wouldn't damage her anymore.
My mother told us and taught us, don't show that you're Native. Don't tell anyone this or that. And we were taught to try and stay away from identifying that.
There was a lot of prejudice growing up on Bainbridge Island because we were dark-skinned. And even by my mom's side, or well, the Native side, it was hard to be accepted by them because
they seen me as more as Filipino than as native. And then the Filipino, it was hard growing up with them too because they thought I was more Indian.
So we were taught to be quiet and to go invisible, to try to blend in, not speak with an accent, never challenge any authorities, never talk back or question our teachers, our counselors. So we were really brought up as good little soldiers. So it wasn't until we were adults that we started seeking out who our mother was, who our relatives were in Canada, and we started constructing our own identity.
Thank you. It's truly a treasure to have Gina and the film made here on Bainbridge Island with this wonderful Indipino community. And the film brings up a lot of emotion for me. I was just wondering if I could start with Joy. What does that trailer, what does it remind you of? Does it remind you of growing up on Bainbridge? Or what are your thoughts about the trailer, Joy?
It was pretty much the same for me growing up, because I'm the first Filipina to graduate from Bainbridge High School in '57. And we were bullied, we were, called dirty Indians. Our parents were alcoholics, but we never told our mom what was happening in school. We were just like Gina said, we were like good soldiers. We just obeyed. But there was, I don't know, there was something strong in our blood that we just, my brothers, two brothers, Sonny and Daniel, we were probably the oldest one, the only natives in the school, and then the rest, the Indipinos followed. But I don't know. I think we were like making a way for, not for us, but for them too. It's like taking care of your children and being the mother, and that we were very, I know I was very shy in school. It wasn't until I married and grew up and, that we after I got married, I know school was hard, and all the way up to the 6th grade. And so, but we just hung in there. Of course, my older brother, he dropped out when he was in the 8th grade because there was just, we couldn't just handle it. We were taught to be good Catholics. We go to catechism and, do what the nuns say. My two brothers would be called to the office and check and see if we had lice or, that we were dirty, and it wasn't even us, But a lot of little things when we were little, that they were swatted with a ruler, and they had paddles, and then we'd go to this little office, and, they'd bring all of us, our whole family, even if it probably wasn't even serious, but I don't know, the teachers weren't really nice to us. And so at least it got better when we started getting in junior high. And I know I was determined to finish school, you know, because that's what my parents wanted me to do. Make a better life for myself and my children. I'm not
Did you
sure what
meet,
else.
I'm sorry, did you meet your husband on Bainbridge or?
No, I met him through a friend of ours. We both had friends. Her name is Diane. And we went to the wedding and he was a photographer. And so from that day, I guess that's, we were married 57 years.
Well, I'm sure he was interested in the most beautiful person there, probably. I probably shouldn't say it that way. So, I'd love to know, or would you share a little bit about your mother's story? How did your mother and father meet?
My mother was a berry picker. She was hired from Canada, her and her sister, and they came down to pick berries. And I had an uncle that was here. His name was Frank Verbang, or a cousin. It was a cousin. And so my aunt wanted to introduce to her sister my dad. So that's how they met in the berry fields. And so I have 13 brothers and sisters in our family. And so this is where we made our home on Bainbridge Island. She raised us and we lived off the land, and in those days there wasn't much money or jobs, but he finally got a job in the shipyard and retired from there. Actually, he had more than one job. He's doing his strawberries and raspberries and garden, and you know. So we never had handouts in those days. I mean, we all fished and dug clams and all this, whatever, you know, was around us.
Well, Anna, thank you, Joy. Thank you very much. It paints a certain picture that's really important. And Anna, I was wondering if you wanted to respond to watching the trailer. Uh-oh, you're muted still.
Oh my gosh. I just was thanking Joy for sharing the story. That Joy, I didn't know that was how you and Harold met. And I've known Joy and Harold since I was a little girl. And in watching the video, what I am just struck by is how we just had not shared our stories collectively before. The ones who were interviewed, and so as I every time that I view a little piece of the video, I think of many more stories, and remembering because some of the history is hard, is harsh. And so those feelings come up, but also really good memories also in terms of the community. And Joy's mom, my favorite story is one time when she had given, all the families worked very hard. And if we didn't have a good season, or my dad didn't have the job, and the community members knew that. And one day I was up there playing with younger sisters, and Joy's mom gives me a little paper bag with about, I don't know, 5 pounds. It had rice in it. And she says, give this to your mom. And I said, oh, okay. And I had to carry that all the way down the hill because we lived down the hill from them. And I was thinking, gosh, it's so heavy. I wonder why I have to carry it. And my mother was so just grateful. And that little story is how the families helped each other, even in, going to get clams. There'd be some dropped off to an auntie or an uncle or an elder. So I think of those things, and along with the memories of growing up on the island. And I would try to have my parents go to the school and advocate for me whenever I experienced a racist comment or was bullied or something was said to me by a teacher. And my father was a teacher in the Philippines, and it was very hard for him to approach the school, whether it was elementary or high school. And a part of it was he was not a citizen of the United States. Now, I didn't know this as a little kid. I just thought, well, why can't he go and talk to them? And my mother also would say, to pick up on what Joy and Gina were saying, that I shouldn't, make any waves. And years later, what I found out from my mother's sister and my grandmother, her mother, was that she had been taken away and put in a residential school. And I didn't know that until I was grown, because my parents didn't talk about their history. They wanted us to be accepted in this country and be US citizens. And my mother was one of the young women that ran away from residential school. And I think of that after I see that that little clip. Was I today and every day I think of, how does a young teenager come and survive, run away into another country and survive? And because she worked up and down the coast in the fields hiding. And so she was also concerned if something got brought up in the school system, that I'd be taken away. And that still even happens today. If there's an issue in family systems, there is a reluctance, because what is looked at first is the parenting style, or that maybe there's something wrong within the family itself, rather than something wrong with the system or a way of doing things. And so I didn't understand a lot of that stuff while growing up. I just felt confused and sad by it, and didn't have the words then to either ask my mother or my dad. It came later in my own history. So when I watch it, those come up, and they're big feelings.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. It reminds me of the story of the Multicultural Advisory Council. The reason we have one on the island is because those painful stories of racism needed to come out, and basically the school system was not even catching that the school was not serving the Indipino, Filipino community. And I'd love to know more about that history, about how there was a time when everybody stood up and came to the school district and told some of the stories, certainly not all the painful stories, but told enough of the stories that the school district felt there needed to be a council, an advisory council. And so I was wondering, you know, this is the one of the things that was interesting when we were doing our pre-interview was I somebody called somebody brother. And so what I was asking is, oh, how are you related in that colonial mindset kind of thing? And I was wondering, when you're talking about family and taking care of each other that way, that rice would be shared, or, you know, clams would be shared. I wonder if you'd share a little bit about the multiple ways that you can think of family.
Yeah, there are multiple ways, trying to land on one right now. And well, for instance, for Harold, Joy's husband, we have done work over the years since the 70s, 80s in terms of health and healing and within Indigenous nations and our own communities. And through one day he said to me, he said, it's important for us to establish our relationship. How do you see me? And I said, well, you're my brother. You're like a big brother, like Joy is a big sister. I said, you're a brother, he said. And so he said, and you are my sister. It's done. He's my brother. And within the both of the Filipino and First Nations way, Canada and US and other Indigenous countries is one, like I'm called an auntie by many younger ones on the island, because that's also a sign of, I mean, it's to be respectful of elders. So relationship gets established very quickly. And because it keeps the line of connection and communication very open, because it establishes our roles, and that still continues. Growing up, we had godfathers, which would be godmothers, and like second mothers and second fathers, and so were aunties, like a second mother. If an auntie corrected you, you knew you were being corrected, and so you then were afraid they were going to tell your parents, which of course they did. But that was part of establishing family and community. And I have, you know, in the film, my brother Andy is speaking. He and I established a relationship. My sister Tina is on there too. We all grew up together. So I hope this is a little bit about in terms of how family community is looked at, and it's a very interdependent system, and we still count on each other quite a bit, and it's, I think, a good thing. I like it. Does that answer?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Joy, I was thinking about when I asked you if you wanted to share your story, and I was remembering that that you were talking about the women who married, you know, the women from different tribes and the Native women who married, and how you felt like they hadn't been seen or talked about before, and how they really contributed. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the women contributed to the community?
In our native ways, my mom taught us, you know, to treat everybody the same as you would want to be treated. But she was she was a giving person. She was sharing, and all the Native women, you know, they all, if somebody needed help with their houses, all the Filipinos and the women would do the cooking and the men. And we'd share and help them. And if somebody was sick or somebody was, you know, some elders passed away, we'd go there, bring a pot of soup or whatever we had. It's just knowing that we, you know, cared. And I think with all the Native women, they were taught, you know, to take care of one another. You know, they were the backbones of the men, because they took care of the children. They cooked. They helped with the gardening and whatever. You know, because in those days they didn't have regular jobs as they do today, and so their job was, you know, to help each other. I know that when my mom was having children, our neighbor Welda would come over and take care of us. My cousin Maisie, you know, would come and cook for us before we went to school, and there was always, you know, whatever you do for someone, the good will come back. Even giving, sharing. If you share what little you have, it means a lot. We were rich in children. My husband would say, we may be poor, but we're rich in children. So our main objection was, you know, the children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what that dedication coming from your mother and your father, and then to you and your husband. And you said that your husband had traveled a lot, so you really needed you really were the backbone too, just like your mother taught you. That's really wonderful. So Anna, I'm going to go back to your understanding later in life, actually, that your mom had run away from residential school. And I was wondering, do you think it's, what is it, how does learning about residential schools and Bainbridge schools today, how is it relevant today? Why do you think it's important today to learn about the residential schools?
It's very important to know not only these stories for us as individuals in a community, but also as Bainbridge Island, and also as Washington State and part of, and the United States and Canada, because this experience of residential schools, that's what they were called in Canada, and they were boarding schools here in the United States. The indigenous people of Australia also, I mean, it's an indigenous experience because so we basically were in the way at the time settlers and the colonizing began. So you gave the gratitude to the Suquamish people, and the Suquamish people have experienced being put in boarding schools. We have two tribes here, the Port Gamble Sklallam. We also have treaties here in this area. The United States has with these two tribes that were signed in the 1800s, mid 1800s, and it's those treaties don't get talked about in our histories. I had taken Washington State history. One of the things that I had to do was study the Chinook jargon in the class. And that was, we were tested on it, but there was no application of what really that was. And just one takeaway here that I think is important is the Port Gamble Sklallam people over here. When that treaty, I'm trying to remember the name of the treaty, Point No Point Treaty, I believe. When it was negotiated, it was done in Chinook jargon. There's like 100 words. And so it wasn't done in the language. And I mean, there were just so many points in terms of just worldviews, like you were just talking about family and how family is structured or community is seen, and the interdependent knowing that's within indigenous communities, that's both in the Filipino side and the Native side, and that there was no understanding about that. And so there was over like 430,000 acres of ancestral lands that was signed in that treaty to the US government, and it was taken from Port Gamble Sklallam people. And the Port Gamble Sklallam people, the other thing is, are still here. Joy and I are still here, given this is such a history of actions that were designed to get rid of us. And, you know, I'm sitting here drinking a glass of water. That was my husband who just came in to bring me some cookies a little while ago. And it looks like a soda or something, because he knows the history and he knows how hard this is for me to bring up and talk about, because I'm still in the healing. And we as a country have to start that healing process together. And so a part of it is getting the head information in terms of history, because we are a global community. We are impacted. My goodness, we have to learn that with COVID, how serious these viruses are. For instance, my nation was practically wiped out by viruses. At the turn of the century, there was only 144 sea shell people, 144 out of thousands and thousands. And I'm still here. And so talk about the resiliency and the way of life that promotes life. Anyway, this is a big part of my heart in terms of knowing the need for healing and learning ways to share histories and talk with each other is vital. It's a part of our histories here and around the world.
Learning the histories of the people with whom I live and where I live has been challenging and hard. It doesn't matter if I have a good heart or good intentions or any of that, or I say I work in a history museum, but what's really important, you know, is the listening. So I'm so grateful for the sharing that you've done, and I just acknowledge, Anna, that I'm grateful to your husband Gary for bringing you that water, and for Tracy for being present with Joy.
One of the discussions with the Filipino community is we have a hall that was bought and purchased by our compadres, or ones who were part of the beginning of the Filipino nonprofit, and that hall now we have outgrown. So we know that we need a larger space. So it's very, very exciting that we have so many children and grandchildren here, like Joy is saying, and we've run out of a gathering space, which is what our uncles and our dads thought at the time, how necessary it was to have a place to gather, to have honorings, to have dinners together, to pray together, to grieve together. And so that old hall is really very significant to us in terms of the need for the families to get together. And that's how we have helped hold each other up.
Thank you. And it's really great. There you have many historians in your in the hall. You know, that people are really gathering. You've worked really hard with Gilda and Pinky Madagiagas also worked hard.
Yes.
And so I invite people who want to get a sense, you know, to go to the hall, you know, when there's an event or something there. And there's a wonderful, wonderful presence all throughout the island. So let's see, Joy, I was wanting to ask you, so is this the first time that you've told your story? Has anyone asked you before?
Probably about 10 years ago, I have a sister in Vermont. She wanted to write some stories about the values of the front porch. So she asked me if I would tell her story of my mother. And so I did. So there is a book out called The Values from the Front Porch, and that includes different Native elders talking a little about their history. So if anybody has a chance, they can, the traditional grandmothers, you know, from all over, so.
Now I'm curious. I want to read about your mother's story that your sister asked you about 10 years ago. That's fantastic. So I'm interested in the fact that, you know, whatever you might want to call it, there's been some good movement forward or some good exploration, let's say, of celebrating the history. And so October not only has now October Indigenous Peoples Day, but it also is Filipino American Month. And so I wanted to give people a chance to share some of the things that some of the events that might be happening to celebrate that. Of course, Honor Thy Mother is going to be shown two times now on both Sunday and Monday. And so you can find information about that on the website, or we can also put it in the chat, or any of the people here can put that in the chat. But I was just wondering, Joy, and one of the things I wanted to mention is, Anna, we were talking about Indigenous peoples, and I was asking, well, what about your Indigenous side? And you said that, well, both my sides are Indigenous. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that answer and how naive my question was.
You're asking me?
Yeah. Just I'm kind of like putting myself on the spot because I was assuming that your Indigenous side was your mother's side.
Well, the Ilocano people are indigenous to an area there in the Philippines, and there are different stories in terms of how they got there, just like how indigenous people got here. And how I talk about indigenous people, and it includes my father, his history, his language, and where his family and the generations before him came from, and still take care of the land there. And it's that we're indigenous, and I think the beauty of the marriage between the Filipinos and the First Nations women has to do with the combining of very strong value systems that continue today, that are connected to the land, that are connected to the understanding that we're related, that we have to take care of each other, we have to help each other. I mean, there's just lots of interconnections there. So it's okay, Katie, you don't have to apologize. I think the time we're in is a very valuable and needed stretching of learning. And that's what we're about today in this world. It's okay to say I don't know, and I know that's within the Indigenous way of looking at things. It's a very beautiful way to learn more when you say I don't know.
Anna mentioned that for telling stories is something that elders do, and that this is for the senior center. And so there was just a really lovely feeling about how this center is part of asking to listen to the stories. Really, really appreciate that today. I thank you both, and I wonder, is there anything, Anna, that we missed that you'd like to say?
Well, I look at this time as a beginning conversation, and the beginning of building a relationship. So I know that there are many wonderings, thoughts, questions in this time that we're in, and it's a good way to do this, where we just do stop and listen to stories, and in the best way that we can. And I want to raise my hands up to Joy also for sharing your stories. Like I've said, I've known you all my life, and I always learn something new, and it's always so good. And to the Senior Center, I'm raising my hands up. This is a First Nations way when we gather, that we don't necessarily clap at our gatherings, some of our ceremonies. We actually raise our hands up like this, which is saying to the people, literally, you lift me up, you lift up my heart. So I raised my hands to Joy, and also to you, Katie, and the ones who are on this Zoom call. It's so different from an Indigenous gathering where we'd sit next to each other and can actually, like I could borrow $1 or so from the person next to me. And this is, I don't know how to do it on a Zoom call, but so we're just raising my hands. I don't know that I have other comments other than it's a good thing to do this on Bainbridge Island, and I want to encourage that.
I just wanted to ask Joy. Joy, was there anything that you hope to say or that we forgot that you would like to say? Because thank you so much.
I think we have to teach our children the values, of hard work, respect, and compassion for one another. If nothing else, give love to one another. Not only in our family, but, to everybody. And so I say, love you all, and thank the grandmas for tuning in, and just like I was telling Anna, that we make relationships that were my age. I'm a grandma, and if there's younger ones, they call me sister or auntie, So all the little ones, I'm the grandma to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a shout out to our next program. We're going to have the next program in October, again at 11:30 to 12:30, before the showing of Honor Thy Mother on Indigenous Peoples Day. We'll have Barbara Lawrence talking about her father, who was in residential school here, and we're honored to have her here. And I just wanted to say thank you again to our incredible guests. It's been wonderful. And thank you to all the elders that are here. It was just wonderful to see everybody who came today. This is a great big crowd, isn't it, Reed? And yes, we look forward to you sharing this with your families, and look forward to seeing you all in the community. Thank you so much.